It's already too late to stop now. That's what Dominic said to me, and I swear, even now, I can still hear the way his voice dropped on those last words. Low. Certain. Like he'd already decided everything for both of us. The messed up part? I didn't stop him. I didn't even plan to be there that night. It was one of those random evenings where nothing feels right, like you're just restless for no clear reason. My apartment felt too quiet, my phone was dead silent, and every attempt at distracting myself just made it worse. So I texted Dominic. We weren't that close, not really. More like friends of friends who ended up hanging out enough times that it became normal. He was the kind of guy who didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. Tall, calm, always a little distant. And yeah, I noticed him. Of course I had. I just never thought anything would actually happen. He replied almost instantly. Come over. I've got beer. That was it. No emojis. No small talk. Just an invitation. And for some reason, that was enough. His place was about 15 minutes away. I remember the drive feeling longer though, like my brain kept trying to figure out why I was going there in the first place. We'd hung out before, sure. Group settings. Parties. Loud music. Easy distractions. But this? Just me and him? That was new. And I couldn't shake this weird feeling in my chest. Not exactly nerves. Not exactly excitement. Something in between. When I knocked, he opened the door almost immediately, like he'd been standing right there waiting. Hey, he said. Simple. Casual. But his eyes lingered on me for a second longer than usual. Hey, I replied, stepping inside. His apartment smelled like coffee and something faintly woody, like one of those expensive candles people pretend they didn't spend too much money on. It was quiet. Too quiet. No TV. No music. Just us. Bears in the kitchen, he said, already turning away. I followed him, trying to act normal, like this wasn't slightly weird. Didn't expect you to be alone, I admitted. He grabbed 2 bottles, handing one to me. I usually am. There was something about the way he said it. Not sad. Not lonely. Just factual. We ended up sitting on his couch, a safe distance apart at first. Talking about random stuff. Work. People we both knew. The usual. But the conversation felt different. Slower. More focused. Like neither of us was really paying attention to the words. At some point, there was a pause. Not awkward exactly. Just quiet. I took a sip of my beer, glancing over at him. And he was already looking at me. Not in a casual way. Not in a friendly way. Just looking. You ever get tired of pretending? He asked suddenly. I frowned slightly. Pretending what? His gaze didn't shift. Like you don't notice things. My stomach tightened. That's kind of vague, man. He leaned back slightly, one arm resting along the back of the couch. But his eyes stayed locked on mine. You notice, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. And that's when it hit me. The looks. The moments. All the times I thought I imagined something. I didn't. I let out a small breath, trying to play it off. Notice what? But even I could hear it. That slight edge in my voice. Dominic tilted his head just slightly, studying me. You're really gonna make me say it? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because suddenly, everything felt too real. He shifted closer. Not a lot. Just enough that I noticed. Enough that my body did too. Shane, he said, my name sounding different coming from him. Slower. More deliberate. You've been looking at me the same way for months. My heart started pounding. Don't, he cut in quietly. Not harsh. Just firm. Don't lie. And the worst part? I didn't. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything we'd said so far. I could hear my own breathing. Feel the space between us shrinking even though either of us moved. You gonna tell me I'm wrong? He asked. I swallowed. No. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. Because something changed in his expression. Subtle. But there. Like a line had just been crossed. And neither of us was going back. He moved closer again. This time, there was no pretending it was accidental. My pulse spiked, my brain screaming at me to say something, do something. But I didn't. I just sat there. Watching him. Waiting. You know what this means, right? He asked, his voice lower now. I nodded slightly. Even though I wasn't sure I fully did. He leaned in just enough that I could feel his presence, close, overwhelming. Say it, he murmured. I hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper. It changes things. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Yeah, he said. It does. And then he said it. The words that would replay in my head over and over again after that night. The ones that made my chest tighten even now. It's already too late to stop now. I should have pulled away. I should have laughed it off. Said we were being stupid. Ruining something simple. But I didn't. Because deep down, I knew exactly what he meant. And I think I'd known for a while. So instead, I stayed. And that was my first mistake. I don't know who moved first. That's the honest truth. 1 second we were just sitting there, too close, breathing the same air, and the next, everything blurred into something I couldn't control anymore. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. But suddenly, there wasn't space between us at all. My brain was still trying to catch up when I felt his hand brush against mine. Not an accident. Slow. Intentional. Like he was giving me one last chance to pull away. I didn't. His fingers closed around mine, firm, grounding. And for a second, either of us moved. It felt bigger than it should have. Just a hand. But it wasn't just that. It was everything we hadn't said finally catching up to us. Still wanna pretend? Dominic asked quietly. I shook my head. Couldn't even look at him now. Because if I did, I knew there'd be no going back. Too late for that anyway. His grip tightened slightly before he let go, his hand sliding up my arm instead. Slow. Deliberate. Like he was testing every reaction. And yeah, my body reacted. Instantly. Relax, he murmured. Which was almost funny, because I'd never felt less relaxed in my life. My heart was going insane, my chest tight, every nerve in my body hyper-aware of where he was touching me. You're overthinking, he added. I let out a quiet breath. I'm not. He huffed out something that sounded like a small laugh. You always do. That caught me off guard. I glanced at him. What's that supposed to mean? He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me again. That same steady, unreadable expression, except now there was something else under it. Something warmer. I've been watching you, he said. Simple. Direct. My stomach flipped. That doesn't sound creepy at all, I muttered, trying to deflect. But it came out weaker than I wanted. His hand moved again, this time resting against my side. Not pushing. Not pulling. Just there. You act like you don't want things, he continued. My throat felt dry. What things? His fingers pressed slightly into my side, grounding me again. Things like this. The air shifted. I swear it did. Because suddenly, there was no pretending this was just some vague conversation anymore. No hiding behind jokes. No distractions. Dominic, I started, but my voice came out quieter than I expected. He leaned in just a little closer. Yeah? I hesitated. Because I didn't even know what I was about to say. Stop? Slow down? Or something completely different? But before I could figure it out, his hand moved again, sliding from my side to my back, pulling me just a little closer. My breath caught. Say it, he said softly. That again. Like he needed to hear me admit it. I swallowed hard. This is a bad idea. He didn't pull away. Didn't even react the way I expected. If anything, he moved closer. Then why are you still here? He asked. And yeah, that shut me up. Because I didn't have an answer. Not a good one anyway. My brain was still trying to keep control, still throwing out reasons why this was complicated. Messy, probably a mistake. But my body? Didn't care. I exhaled slowly. I don't know. That was the truth. Dominic studied my face for a second, like he was trying to read something deeper. Then his thumb brushed lightly against my side. Small. Almost nothing. But it sent a sharp wave of awareness through me. You do, he said quietly. And maybe I did. I just didn't want to admit it out loud. The tension snapped. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just enough. Because the next thing I knew, my hand was on his arm. Not pushing him away. Not stopping anything. Just there. Holding on to him. His eyes flicked down to it. Then back up to me. Yeah, he murmured. Thought so. And then he moved. Closer. Slow enough that I could have stopped it. Fast enough that I didn't. My back pressed slightly into the couch as he leaned in, his presence overwhelming in the best and worst way possible. Last chance, he said quietly. Not a warning. More like confirmation. My heart was pounding so hard it almost hurt. But I didn't look away. Didn't move. Shane, he added softer now. And that was it. That was the moment. Because instead of stopping him, I leaned in too. And everything after that? Yeah. There was definitely no going back. The moment our foreheads almost touched, everything slowed down. Not in a dramatic, movie kind of way. More like, my brain just stopped working properly. I could feel his breath. Warm. Steady. Way too close. Neither of us moved for a second. And somehow, that felt more intense than anything else. You're still thinking? Dominic murmured. Of course I was. That's all I'd been doing since I walked into his apartment. Thinking about what this meant. What it would mess up. What it would change. But standing there this close to him, none of that felt as important anymore. Yeah, I admitted quietly. He huffed out a soft breath, almost amused. Figures. His hand shifted slightly against my back, not pulling me in, not forcing anything, just there. Waiting. You always do this, he said. What? Overanalyze everything until you talk yourself out of it. That hit a little too close. I let out a small breath, my fingers tightening slightly against his arm without realizing it. Maybe I have a reason to. He didn't argue. Didn't push. Just looked at me again, that same steady gaze, like he was trying to decide something. Then tell me to stop, he said. Simple. Direct. My chest tightened. Because yeah. I could have. That was the easy way out. Say the word. Take a step back. Pretend none of this ever happened. But I didn't say anything. His eyes flicked between mine, searching. Waiting. Shane, he said again, quieter this time. I shook my head slightly. Not in refusal. Just overwhelmed. I don't want to, I admitted. There it was. Out loud. No taking it back. Something shifted in his expression again. Softer this time. Less guarded. Yeah, he said under his breath. Didn't think you did. The tension didn't snap this time. It settled. Deeper. Heavier. We stayed like that for a moment. Close. Too close. But not rushing it anymore. And that somehow made it worse. Or better. I still can't decide. Then stop thinking, Dominic added quietly. I let out a small, almost nervous laugh. Not really my thing. Try. Easy for him to say. But I did. At least, a little. Because instead of pulling back, I stayed exactly where I was. Letting the moment stretch. Letting myself feel it instead of analyze it. And for the first time that night, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like something I'd been avoiding for a long time. His hand shifted again, this time more certain. Not testing anymore. Not hesitant. And my body responded before my brain could catch up. "See?" he murmured. I rolled my eyes slightly, even though my heart was still racing. "Don't get ahead of yourself." That earned a small smile from him. The first real one that night. "Too late for that, too," he said. I shook my head, but I couldn't stop the small smile pulling at my own lips. And that changed something. Because suddenly, it wasn't just tension anymore. It wasn't just confusion. It was easier. Not simple. Not safe. But real. And standing there, way too close to him, with no space left between us, I realized something I probably should have figured out a lot sooner. This didn't just start tonight. And whatever was happening between us, it wasn't going to end here either. We didn't rush it after that. That's the part that stuck with me the most. Not the tension. Not the way everything flipped in a matter of minutes. But how steady it suddenly became. We ended up sitting back down, but this time there was no space between us. No awkward distance. No pretending. My shoulder brushed against his, and neither of us moved away. "Still think this is a bad idea?" Dominic asked after a while. His voice was quieter now. Not teasing. Not pushing. Just curious. I let out a slow breath, staring ahead instead of at him. "Yeah." A pause. "But I'm not stopping," I added. That earned a quiet huff from him. Not quite a laugh. More like acknowledgement. "Good," he said. I glanced at him. "Good?" He turned his head slightly, meeting my eyes again. "I didn't want you to." Something about the way he said that. No hesitation. No second guessing. Just honest. It made my chest feel tight again. But not in a bad way. "You're way too sure about this," I muttered. "Someone has to be." I rolled my eyes a little, but I couldn't argue with that. Because if it were up to me, I'd probably still be sitting across the room, pretending none of this was happening. Silence settled again. But this time it wasn't heavy. It felt comfortable. "Since when?" I asked after a minute. He frowned slightly. "Since when what?" "This." I gestured vaguely between us. "Since when has this been a thing?" He leaned back slightly, thinking. And for the first time that night, he actually looked unsure. "Don't know," he admitted. I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" He shrugged one shoulder. "At first I thought it was just in my head." That caught my attention. "Seriously?" He nodded slightly. "Yeah. You look at me sometimes, then act like nothing happened." I let out a quiet breath. "Yeah, well, same." That made him glance at me again. "For how long?" he asked. I hesitated. Because saying it out loud felt bigger than I expected. "Couple months," I admitted. His lips pressed together briefly, like he was holding back a reaction. "Yeah," he said after a second. "About the same." That did something to me. Realizing this wasn't one-sided. That it hadn't just been me overthinking random moments. All those looks. All those almost their situations. They weren't accidental. "We're idiots," I muttered. That actually got a small laugh out of him. "Yeah," he agreed. Another pause. "But we figured it out," he added. I glanced at him again. "And what exactly did we figure out?" His expression shifted slightly. More serious now. "That this isn't nothing," he said. Simple words. But they landed hard. I looked away for a second, processing that. Because yeah, that was the part I'd been trying to avoid. Calling it what it actually was. "And what if it messes things up?" I asked quietly. There it was. The real question. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. Thinking. Actually thinking this time. "It might," he said finally. Honest. No sugarcoating. I nodded slowly. Yeah. But, he added. I looked back at him. But I think pretending it's not there would mess things up more. That hit harder than I expected. Because I knew he was right. All those weeks of ignoring it, acting normal, it hadn't made anything better. It just made everything more tense. More confusing. Yeah, I admitted quietly. We sat there for a bit after that. No rush to fill the silence. No need to. And for the first time that night, I felt something settle in my chest. Not confusion. Not panic. Something steadier. Hey, Dominic said after a while. I looked at him. You good? Simple question. But the way he asked it. Like he actually cared about the answer. I nodded slowly. Yeah. And for once, I meant it. Because whatever this was, messy, complicated, probably not a great idea. It didn't feel wrong anymore. It just felt real. And honestly, that was enough to keep me there. We didn't move for a while after that. Just sat there, side by side, like nothing had changed, even though everything clearly had. It was strange. How something could feel so big. And at the same time, so natural. You're quiet again, Dominic said after a bit. I let out a small breath, rubbing the back of my neck. Yeah, well, I'm trying not to overthink, remember? That earned a faint smirk from him. Doesn't look like it's working. Shut up, I muttered, but there was no real bite to it. He shifted slightly, turning toward me more fully. And just that small movement made my chest tighten again. You always do that, he said. What? Try to act like you've got everything under control. I frowned a little. I do have everything under control. He raised an eyebrow. Right. I nudged him lightly with my shoulder. Seriously. But even I didn't sound convinced. Because the truth was, I didn't have anything under control anymore. Not my thoughts. Not whatever this was between us. Not the way my body reacted every time he got just a little closer. And he knew it. You don't have to, Dominic said after a moment. I blinked. What? Have everything figured out? He clarified. I looked at him, trying to read his expression. But for once, it wasn't guarded. It was open. That's kind of my thing, I said quietly. Yeah, he replied. I know. Of course he did. That realization hit harder than I expected. Because it meant he'd been paying attention. More than I thought. Guess I'm not doing a great job tonight then, I muttered. He shook his head slightly. Or maybe you're just finally being honest. That shut me up. Because yeah, that was exactly what it felt like. Honest. Messy. Unfiltered. And a little terrifying. I exhaled slowly, leaning back into the couch. Feels like I'm screwing something up. You're not, he said immediately. Too fast. Too certain. I turned my head toward him. You don't know that. He held my gaze. Yeah. I do. There it was again. That confidence. That certainty I didn't have. Why? I asked. He didn't look away. Because this was already there. My chest tightened. We're just not ignoring it anymore, he added. I swallowed. Still feels risky. He shrugged slightly. Everything is. Not exactly comforting. But also, not wrong. Silence settled again, softer this time. My leg brushed against his. And instead of pulling away, I stayed. So did he. You gonna regret this? I asked quietly. I don't even know why I asked. Maybe I just needed to hear it. He didn't answer right away. Which, honestly, made my stomach twist more than if he had. But then. No. Simple. Steady. I studied his face. You sure? He nodded once. Yeah. Another pause. What about you? He asked. I hesitated. because that answer wasn't as simple. But when I really thought about it, not the fear, not the what ifs, just how I felt right now. No, I said. And I meant it. Something in his expression softened again. Good, he murmured. We stayed like that for a while. Not talking. Just existing in the same space. And it felt different now. Less like we were crossing a line. More like we'd already crossed it. And we're just figuring out what came next. After a few minutes, Dominic shifted slightly, turning toward me again. Closer. Hey, he said quietly. I looked at him. We're not going back to how it was before, he added. Not a question. A statement. My chest tightened again. Yeah, I said. Because there was no point pretending otherwise. He nodded slightly, like that was all he needed to hear. And then, softer. Good. And I don't know why. But hearing that? It made me feel a lot less scared about everything that came next. It was weird how normal it started to feel. Not normal like nothing happened. But normal like we stopped fighting it. At some point, I realized I wasn't sitting tense anymore. Wasn't overthinking every small movement. Wasn't trying to create distance. If anything, I was doing the opposite. You're staring again, Dominic said. I blinked, snapping out of it. I'm not. He turned his head slightly, giving me that look. The one that said, yeah, you are, without actually saying it. Okay, maybe a little, I admitted. A faint smirk pulled at his lips. Thought you were trying not to overthink. I'm not overthinking, I said. Then what are you doing? I hesitated. Because, yeah? Good question. Just noticing things, I said finally. His eyebrow lifted slightly. Like what? I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. Don't make it weird. He let out a quiet huff, almost amused. Too late for that. Fair. I leaned back slightly, trying to act casual again. Even though that ship had clearly sailed. Okay, your turn then, I said. My turn? Yeah. You've been noticing things too, apparently. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me again. That same steady, focused gaze. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure I wanted that answer. But then. You get quieter when you're nervous. I frowned. I'm not nervous. He tilted his head slightly. Right now? I opened my mouth. Then stopped. Because, yeah? Maybe a little. Okay, maybe a little, I admitted. That earned a small nod from him. Like he'd expected that. And you fidget, he added. I glanced down. My fingers were tapping lightly against my leg. I stopped immediately. That made him smirk. See? He said. Shut up, I muttered, but I couldn't help the slight smile creeping in. It was strange. How easy it felt now. A couple hours ago, I would have overanalyzed every word, every look. Now? I was just here. With him. You're different tonight, he said after a moment. That caught me off guard. How? He shrugged slightly. Less guarded. I let out a small breath. Yeah, well, guess I don't have much of a choice now. You always had a choice, he said. I looked at him. But you stayed anyway, he added. My chest tightened slightly. Yeah, I said quietly. Because that was the part that mattered. Not how it started. Not how messy it could get. The fact that I didn't leave. Another pause. But this one felt heavier. Not uncomfortable. Just real. What happens now? I asked. There it was. The question I'd been avoiding. Dominic didn't answer immediately. He leaned back slightly, exhaling slowly like he was actually thinking about it. I don't know, he said finally. Honest. Again. I nodded. Yeah. Me either. But, he added. I looked at him. We figure it out. Simple. And somehow, enough. I let out a quiet breath, nodding slightly. Yeah. Because for the first time that night, I wasn't trying to plan 10 steps ahead. I wasn't trying to control how this ended. I was just letting it happen. And maybe that was the biggest change of all. Dominic shifted slightly closer again, not hesitant anymore. Not testing. Just there. And this time? I didn't even think about it. I just stayed. Because whatever this was, whatever it was turning into, I wasn't walking away from it anymore. Time started to blur after that. Not in a dramatic way. Just, we stopped keeping track of it. At some point, the second beers were empty. Then the third. Neither of us really paying attention. We were still sitting close. Closer than before, actually. Like the space between us just disappeared completely. You're not even trying to leave, Dominic said. I glanced at him. Was I supposed to? He shrugged slightly. Most people would have by now. Good thing I'm not most people, I muttered. That earned a quiet smirk. I notice, he said. I rolled my eyes, but there was no real annoyance behind it. Because yeah, he had noticed. Way more than I thought. The room felt different now. Warmer. Heavier. But not in a bad way. More like everything had settled into place. You thinking again? He asked. I let out a small breath. A little. About what? I hesitated. Us, I admitted. He didn't react right away. Just watched me. Waiting. And? He pressed. I rubbed the back of my neck again, exhaling slowly. I don't know what this is, I said. Honest. Probably the most honest thing I'd said all night. He nodded slightly. Yeah. That was it. No big explanation. No pressure. Just agreement. That bother you? He asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. A little, I admitted. Another nod. Same. That caught me off guard. You? I asked. He huffed out a quiet breath. Yeah. I just don't show it as much. That actually made me smile a little. Of course you don't. He nudged my arm lightly. Shut up. But there was something underneath that. Something real. And it made everything feel even more grounded. Because this wasn't just me freaking out in my head. He felt it too. Guess we're both kinda screwed then, I muttered. He let out a small laugh. Yeah. Probably. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't just comfortable. It felt important. Like this moment actually mattered. You ever think about what happens if this works? He asked suddenly. That caught me off guard. Works? I repeated. He nodded slightly. Yeah. I frowned a little. I haven't even figured out what this is yet. Fair, he said. A pause. But still. I looked at him. And for the first time that night, he looked unsure again. Not by much. But enough. I don't know, I admitted. Because I really didn't. Thinking too far ahead suddenly felt dangerous. But I don't think I want to pretend this didn't happen, I added. That part, at least, I was sure about. His expression softened slightly. Yeah, he said quietly. Me either. Something about that settled in my chest. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough. We stayed like that for a while longer. Talking less. Thinking less. Just being there. And eventually, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for the moment to end anymore. I wasn't counting the minutes. Planning my exit. I was just staying. Because for the first time in a long time, I actually wanted to see where this would go. Even if I had no idea what that meant yet. And honestly, that was the scariest part of all. At some point I checked my phone. 2:17 a.m. Damn, I muttered. Dominic glanced over. What? It's late. He followed my gaze for a second, then just shrugged. Yeah. That was it. No, you should go. No, I'll walk you out. And weirdly, that mattered. Because it felt like he didn't want me to leave either. I locked my phone and set it down, leaning back again. You tired? He asked. I shook my head. Not really. Lie. I was exhausted. But not in a way that made me want to leave. More like, I didn't want the night to end yet. Good, he said quietly. I glanced at him. You? He shook his head slightly. No. Another pause. Then, you can stay, he added. Simple. Like it wasn't a big deal. But it was. My chest tightened slightly. Stay? I repeated. He nodded. Yeah. No pressure. No expectations in his tone. Just an option. And for a second, my brain tried to kick back in. All the usual thoughts. This is moving too fast. This is complicated. You should probably go home. But then I looked at him. And none of that felt as important anymore. You sure? I asked. He held my gaze. Yeah. No hesitation. And that was enough. Okay, I said. The word came out quieter than I expected. But it felt right. Something shifted again. Not dramatic. Just settled. Like we'd crossed one more invisible line. He stood up first, stretching slightly. Bedroom's this way. I let out a small breath, following him. Every step felt heavier. Not in a bad way. Just real. This wasn't just a moment anymore. This was something that was going to carry into tomorrow. Into whatever came next. And for once, I didn't stop myself. Inside his room, it was dim. Soft light from a lamp in the corner. Simple. Clean. Very him. I hovered near the doorway for a second. You gonna just stand there? He asked. I huffed out a small laugh. Shut up. But I stepped in. That was the thing about Dominic. He didn't rush me. Didn't push. He just waited. And somehow, that made everything harder to resist. I sat on the edge of the bed, running a hand through my hair. Still feels kinda unreal, I admitted. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed loosely. Yeah. I looked up at him. That doesn't freak you out? He thought about it for a second. A little, he said. Honest. Again. But not enough to stop, he added. There it was. I let out a quiet breath, nodding slowly. Yeah, same. Silence settled again. But this time, it felt final. Not like the end. More like the beginning of something neither of us could define yet. You good? He asked one more time. I looked at him. Really looked this time. All the tension. All the moments. Everything that led here. And I realized something. I wasn't scared of him. I wasn't even scared of this. I was scared of how much I didn't want to walk away. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. He nodded slightly. Good. And as I leaned back, letting myself finally stop thinking for once, I realized something else. That night didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like the start of something I wasn't ready for, but also didn't want to lose. And maybe that's why his words kept replaying in my head. It's already too late to stop now. Because he was right. It was.